Near the beginning of my school year, my grade learned about the horrible events of September 11th. We had to make a creative project on it. Some kids made diagrams, some kids made paintings, but I decided to make a film. Out of all the films I made, this is really one of them where I really feel the most proud of that I did, especially because I put a lot of work into this one. But also, keep in mind, most of my films are very friendly for all ages, but because of the subject matter, I'm going to say viewer discretion advised. And if you aren't familiar with the horrible events of 9/11, I would suggest you not to watch this film.
It does not appear that there's any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God.
Oh my God.
That looks like a second plane.
September 11th was a beautiful cloudless day in New York City. This is what the Twin Towers looked like at around 8:30 a.m. that morning. This is what those towers looked like 2 hours later. In those 2 hours, both towers were hit by hijacked airplanes. The towers burned ferociously.
I remember walking up to a window, and a young man turned to me with tears coming down his face, and he said, "Will they fall down?" And I said, "No," right away, because I knew that if they hadn't been knocked over, they wouldn't fall down. The fire would be put out. Never has a steel structure building in the history of steel structured buildings ever fallen down for the reasons of fire.
Both the 110-story buildings collapsed to the ground. A total of 4 airplanes were hijacked that day.
Jules, this is Ryan. Listen, on an airplane that's been hijacked, if things don't go well, and it's not looking good, I just want you to know I absolutely love you. I want you to do good. So have a good time. Same to my parents and everybody. And I just totally love you.
With one crashing into the Pentagon outside of Washington, and a 4th into a field in Pennsylvania. In New York City, the images were something out of a horror movie.
All over. It looks like it's snowing out here in downtown Manhattan.
Lower Manhattan, where the Twin Towers had stood for 35 years, looked like a war zone. The streets were coated with white toxic dust. The whole city seemed to be walking around in a state of shock. Nearly 3,000 people had died that day. The area where those 2 iconic towers once stood, the area that would be known as Ground Zero after the buildings fell, is now bursting with life. It is now home to One World Trade Center, which is known as the Freedom Tower. At 1,776 feet high, it's now America's tallest building. At the site, there's also a memorial honoring the people who died on 9/11, and a museum telling the story of what happened on that clear, cloudless Tuesday morning. Also, nearby is what's known as the Survivor's Tree. The tree had been found in the rubble. It had been badly damaged. Luckily, the tree was removed, brought back to health, and returned to the site years later. It remains a symbol of New York City's beauty and resilience.